Hello, welcome to Making Creativity Pay, the podcast where we talk to people in creative industries about how they promote and market their work. I'm Dan Barnett, and for this episode I'm taking a break from the interview format to talk a bit about the use of AI within creativity. That can be within art, comedy, writing, music. And we've got some examples to show both the good and the bad, as well as the ethical hurdles it's impossible to ignore. In my day job as a data analyst, I've seen numerous hype cycles for technology come and go, usually by the people selling said technology. But it does really feel different this time, as the scale of change is incredible. Within coding, the advances are both a blessing and a curse. Stack Overflow was a revelation when it came out. For anyone that's not heard of it before, it's basically a message board where people detail their problem, and some kind soul, or sometimes a snarky one, will provide the benefit of their experience and provide a solution. The thing about coding is it's almost certain whatever problem you have, someone else has had it before, and another person has solved it for them on Stack Overflow. Where the likes of ChatGPT come in though, is this has been improved immeasurably. Where before you sometimes need to be a bit creative to find the best answer in the search, you can now ask a question in a more generic, conversational way and get an answer tailored to your needs. And where in the past you needed to find and join the solution to several problems to fix your issue, now you can do all of that in one go, potentially saving hours. The obvious upside of this is a huge leap in productivity. But the obvious downside, of course, is also a huge leap in productivity. In an ideal world, trebling productivity would mean freeing time up to do more interesting tasks. But in reality, it'll often mean you and two co-workers will have to fight it out to be the one working with the machine. At least in the world of work, this change will give smaller players a chance to grow faster and junior programmers a chance to learn quicker. But in the arts, it's possible it'll be an absolute disaster. Listening to a podcast recently, it felt like the delivery in one of the ads was a bit stilted and some of the emphasis off from what I'd expect a human to sound like. Though that may just be because with podcast or radio adverts, you have to cram a certain amount of words into a set time. So it won't sound totally natural. But this is the end of the ad, and the terms and conditions apply at the end in particular sounded strange.
Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences, so the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. Join today by heading to Indeed.com/podcasts9 and get a £100 sponsored job credit. That's Indeed.com/PODCATZ9. Terms and conditions apply.
Is this ad real or not? I decided as a comparison to take the text and put it through 11 Labs, which is a text-to-speech service which gives the result you're about to hear, which in some parts sounds more real than the original.
Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences, so the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. Join today by heading to Indeed.com/podcasts9 and get a £100 sponsored job credit. That's Indeed.com/PODCATZ9. Terms and conditions apply.
And to make things even stranger, here's a version using an AI-generated copy of my voice, based on just a couple of minutes of the sample audio.
Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences, so the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. Join today by heading to Indeed.com/podcasts9 and get a £100 sponsored job credit. That's Indeed.com/PODCATZ9. Terms and conditions apply.
It's probably not for me to judge how much it sounds like me, as people generally don't think recorded audio sounds like them, even when it is them. But there are certain parts that feel roughly close. 11 Labs offer a more detailed ability to clone your voice when you provide 3 hours of audio, which I'd imagine would be far superior. There are guardrails in place to ensure that it's not something someone else can be doing, cloning your voice. But once it's cloned, then you will have a key you or anyone else can use to make any audio you want with that voice. In a previous episode of Making Creativity Pay, I spoke to author Andy Stanton about his book Benny the Blue Whale, A Descent into Story, Language and the Madness of ChatGPT, where he prompts and cajoles ChatGPT into creating a story with him. It's very much a collaborative effort, and Andy has to steer the chat away from numerous dead ends. And as he says, the story itself isn't that incredible, but it does turn up what Andy calls brilliances.
ChatGPT happens to have this very glitchy, blocky, kind of bumpy, quite bland, corporate-ish writing aesthetic. I find that funny over the long haul. It's repetitions, it's word redundancies, it's cliches, it's occasional really, really getting it wrong, but it's frequent erosions of meaning, which are very hard to trace. It's like cat herding.
Yeah.
To me, that is part of the fabric of writing with ChatGPT as it stands at the moment, and that's funny in itself. But the hit rate is that every now and again, well, I'm the one kind of steering it steering it further into a world of my liking, and it starts to kind of quote unquote understand what I'm after. It, the longer I go with it, so it kind of makes an echolocation of me as well, and it starts to sound to me kind of like a Frankenstein's monster version of my own writing and obsessions. But every so often, because of the way these things work, because it works stochastically, which is a type of randomization where it will throw new stuff into the mix that you weren't expecting. Every so often, that results in what I call a brilliancy, taking that phrase from chess brilliancies, which is a move that a chess computer will find hard to make, even though it's analysing hundreds of millions of moves a second. Even the world's greatest chess computers find it hard to find a brilliancy. Well, to my mind, every so often, ChatGPT does throw up a brilliancy, and I go, my God, I want to know more about that plot point. Would I have come up with that with myself? I don't know. But it doesn't matter because it did. To me, that's a truly collaborative process, even though I'm collaborating with let's say an unthinking fucking idiot.
I was recently at the comedy.co.uk Writers' Conference where I caught up with previous guest, comedy producer Deck Munro, and I talked to him about the episode with Andy and ChatGPT and how I was thinking about using it out of curiosity to create submissions for BBC Sound's DMs Are Open, where they ask for short one-liners and comedy premises around a range of subjects. Deck looked at me like I told him I'd spent the weekend drowning kittens in a sack and said, "I hope you fail." I mentioned I was looking to use it more for inspiration, a bit like Brian Eno's famous oblique strategy cards that are straightforward copy and paste. And Deck said, "I still hope you fail." And to be honest, I kind of agree with him. It'll be a dark day if people can effectively remix other people's work without any credit or compensation to the original. I think truly spectacular art is fine for the time being, but the instances where good enough rather than great is sufficient are starting to eat into artists' work, such as what I discussed earlier with the voiceovers. In music, I tried a site called Udio, which despite having zero musical ability, I was able to create something that, although a long way from earth-shattering brilliance, is at a standard I'd never achieve on my own in my lifetime. The prompt I used was 80s UK indie guitar band with a song about being hit by a double-decker bus. So I was very much envisaging a certain sound, and this was the result.
Last Tuesday, darling, by the bus I got swept away. Who could guess life would flip in the streets where children play? You never think you got till it's flying past. You never think you got till it's flying past. You never think you got till it's flying past. Oh, darling, 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 wish I had another chance.
For now, this is just for nerds with too much time on their hands. Most of the tracks on the site tend to involve bodily fluids of one description or another, but it's not hard to see how something reasonably good can be created without too much effort or skill. The big question for all these use cases is where the training data are coming from, and the ethics and legalities of using this information. Some would like to claim if the source material was publicly available and the end output doesn't sound or look the same as the original, then, well, no harm done, no copyright breached. A great example of the mental gymnastics around ethics of use was on the Hard Fork podcast, where they spoke to an artist about the rights and wrongs of AI image creation.
So, Sarah, I write this newsletter 3 times a week, and often I will illustrate that newsletter with DALL-E, which at this point I haven't even given them any money. I just get, some number of credits. Do you think it's unethical for like newsletter writers like me or other independent writers to be using tools like this to illustrate our works?
I'm sorry if I offend you, but yes, I do think it's unethical because I think you should be hiring an artist to do that.
All right.
Casey, you've been owned.
Well, I invited the question because it's something I think about,
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if your position, Casey, would be that the option was not between hiring an artist and using DALL-E for free. It was between using DALL-E and not having an image on your newsletter or using a, public domain image or something like that. So I can't imagine that your actual thought process was, I'm going to use DALL-E instead of paying an artist.
That is certainly how I've rationalized it. Often I have about 5 minutes before my self-imposed deadline to send out my newsletter, and that's not enough time for an artist to, take a fair crack at something.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I want to be open to the argument that actually, this is relying on a bunch of exploited labor, and I should be, more conscious of that as I make decisions around that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
This was, in a way, an also good example of the positives of AI. Apple Podcasts have now applied transcriptions at a high standard, so it was far easier than it might have been previously to find the clip. Although, for both good and bad, this also means that Apple, as well as other companies, now have an enormous library of speech-to-text across a huge range of languages, accents, and styles of conversation to be used as they see fit. Within the topic of the podcast, the key question is, how do artists get fairly paid for their work? And how do we avoid the grey sludge of good enough writing, art and music, generated for free, taking over more and more of creative spaces? The optimistic vision is one where consumers take their business to ethical corporations who respect copyright and pay for art. But the realist, some would say pessimist in me, feels the horse has bolted, and as AI and human art become harder and harder to distinguish, making a living in art will become even more difficult. For an extra treat, if you're hungry for more, there's an extended mix of one of the versions of the song I created. You can't see, but I'm using air quotes around the word created. I'm a long way from being a music expert, but there's some really nice sections. But the question is, are they in any way original or just a slight tweak of someone else's hard work? Is it just like some kind of homeopathic robbery, taking small bits from so many people that you can't trace it back to any source that may be able to make a claim against you? Thanks for listening.
Pavement's my stage, unscripted, undone. Never saw it coming, it hit like a ton. Twisted metal, scarlet rush, echoes in silence after the crush. Gotta wake up, gotta stand tall then, like a scene stealer, unforeseen, amen. Lights flashing by, a twist in my fate. Sirens wail like a chorus as I contemplate. Lying here counting stars amidst the London rain. Survive the tale to tell in this city's refrain. Because life comes at you fast, but I'm holding on in the double-decker's path. Holding on. Stay holding on. Spinning round, now I'm spinning round, on this lonely street, names all unknown. Got a ticket to ride, but nowhere to go. Bruised, but I'm breathing in this city's grip. Melancholy melody on a hospital trip. Gonna rise up